The Call of the Wild, Goosebumps, Beware the Snowman, Magic Treehouse, Revolutionary War on Wednesday, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and The Abominable Snowman. 5 wintry stories to get us through the worst season of the year. Temporally, that is. This 3-chapter season of the podcast has actually been pretty sweet and well worth listening to. We'll get to all that and more next on Reliterated, Reiterated, Chapter 6. Let's talk. Welcome to Reliterated, Reiterated, the episode where your favorite lowbrow book club discusses the books we read in the past few episodes, cover what we missed, and discuss this latest chapter as a whole, as well as talk about whatever's on our minds. As usual, we give you the fair warning. We use language too mature for kids, analysis too immature for literary scholars, and ignorance too profound to be inoffensive to everyone. This is the end of Chapter 6 of our podcast. We spent some time with some books set in the winter, cold, dreary, miserable, a little bit boring winter.
A little bit boring is an understatement.
I'm Andy.
I'm Harold.
And I'm Josh.
So yeah.
Yeah,
that was a winter chapter.
Yeah. And I spent this whole winter locked inside of a house. I actually didn't even have to, which was kind of nice, because I didn't have to deal with any of the cold stuff. Like, really through the coldest part of winter, I was stuck inside the house. I couldn't shovel, so no one could ask me to do stuff like that. If someone's car got stuck, they couldn't ask me to do that. I didn't have to wake up early and trudge through the snow and drive through the snow, so that was all kind of nice. I mean, I guess if you're looking at silver linings.
Right. So if you want to escape winter, you can either go on vacation to your summer house, or if you're poor like us, break your foot.
Break your foot. Yep.
Or move to California. That's what I did.
Yeah, as long as you can get some sort of compensation.
Right.
You're not going to starve yourself, yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, I'm glad it's actually going to be over pretty quick here. On Thursday, I go see the doctor finally, and I'm sure they're going to okay me to go back to work finally, and I am ready to interact with other human beings then.
Rejoin the world.
Movie nights are over. Boo.
Yeah, we can still do movie nights on the weekend.
Yay!
You'll have your visitation days every other weekend, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I know it sucks. So I'm glad that you'll be able to get out and do stuff and move around a little bit rather than just being stuck.
It's not just the being stuck though, and I mean, it's not like I haven't had people to talk to. I've had like you guys to talk to and everything, but there's only like 1 or 2 other people that I interact with right now other than you guys, that I actually get to be face to face and have like, see facial interactions and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
So like I'm excited to actually go see mannerisms again, like people talking with their hands and
be in social situations with social cues and be reminded why you want to go home and play video games.
Exactly.
Rather than being forced to stay home and play video games.
Precisely.
And read, of course. Reading is important.
Yeah.
You have a whole podcast around it.
It definitely made that easier. I was just knocking the books out in a few hours before the podcast.
I thought for a second you were going to say Morbius, like you were excited to go see Morbius. I'm like, what's wrong with you? That's awful.
I'll probably not be seeing that movie.
Yeah, me either.
You got out to see Batman.
Oh yeah, I did.
Batman
twice.
Was great.
Oh yeah, the Batman was everything I've wanted in a Batman movie my entire life. I was so happy with it.
Yes, it was a cinematic treat.
Do you think we could cover comic books, or do you think that's too much of a visual medium?
I mean, it might be something we could look into at some point. I think we wouldn't be able to do just like a comic book. We'd have to do
like a graphic novel or something like that.
A graphic novel or a series. I mean, I would love to talk about, even though it's been talked about ad nauseum, I'd love to talk about something like The Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns. Those are really good.
Were they 90s?
Yeah, what were the popular
like what kind of
in the 90s?
Those are 80s, man. They were 80s.
Oh, yeah, Watchmen was 80s. That's right.
Yeah.
So we
I want
could
to say
still have grown up with them in the 90s.
right.
Yeah.
I want to say Red is also from the 90s. It might be later though. Let me see here. But yeah, I've got quite a few different graphic novels that I really enjoyed. Oh, it looks like it was 2009. So no, not Red. But yeah, there's plenty of them we can find from that time period.
We can look into
For
it
sure.
and see which ones might be worthy of discussing.
Right.
Yep, all that comic literature.
Yeah, because it's still a story, and I mean,
Oh yeah.
reading Watchmen, that was the first graphic novel I ever read. I actually wasn't very big into comic books as a kid. I had a few of them, but I just didn't have access to them because even though they were like $1.75 a piece, you're trying to tell your parent to buy a comic book, and in the 90s, it wasn't like it is now. My kids ask me for something, and usually I'm like, man, I want to get it for them because, it sucks being a kid and never getting anything. So within reason, I'm not spoiling them, but I like them to be able to get stuff, and not feel like, they're pieces of shit for daring to ask me. So when I was a kid, man, you'd ask for something like that and no, oh God. It's like, I look at it now, I'm like, they were $1.25. You gotta be fucking kidding me.
And it was the 90s.
Yeah.
People still had money.
It wasn't like, and we didn't have access to the internet or anything like that. So,
Right,
yeah,
we needed
anyhow.
stuff to do.
Yeah, we needed stuff to do. But yeah, I started reading graphic novels later on, probably in my late 20s, and Watchmen was one of the first ones. And that would be really fun to read because it's, it tells a story just like a regular novel.
I just don't know
It's
if
a very
that
good
one
story.
that one is geared towards children. I don't think that one's really geared towards kids.
Perhaps it is. Perhaps it isn't.
So here's the way I look at that.
It depends on how messed up your kids are.
The kids that got comic books back in the day, like if you were to ask Kevin Smith what he was reading when he was 10 years old, it would definitely be hard comics like that because his parents didn't realize they were violent in nature.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like comic books in general. So it's just something to look into. I agree with looking at it.
Well, hey, it did what I wanted. A good topic of discussion. So
Yeah, we may include some comic book literature in our future.
But speaking of our past, what do we want to talk about from earlier this chapter?
Well, I mean,
I guess we can discuss which one we enjoyed that we hated reading the least.
I liked Call of the Wild. I thought it was a good, fun book. I did not enjoy that Snowman book because it was trash. Sorry, R.L. Stein, you're never going to come on our podcast. You're never going to listen to this, but that book was not good. So
no,
You've
it
done
was
better.
not.
You've done better.
Yeah. And then the Washington, that one was, well, we learned that is not the type of book we should cover.
Yeah, right.
It was incredibly simple.
Yeah.
and
If we're going to do
not a
something
heck
like
of a lot
that,
to
we'll have
it.
to do the whole, like the 4-chapter series of that one, or however many it is.
Yeah, cover an arc.
Yeah, maybe not pick something having to do with American history in the turbulent times we're in right now.
Yeah. Wait till July. That will be...
That will not be any better. I say we stay away from that shit as far away as we can.
Right.
We all
There was an episode of The Simpsons that I wanted us all to watch. It kind of as a companion piece to Revolutionary War on Wednesday, and it was the episode called Lisa the Iconoclast. And she discovers in her studies on Jebediah Springfield for a school report that Jebediah Springfield wrote a secret confession in which he admitted to being, first of all, not actually Jebediah Springfield, but Hans Sprungfeld, a notorious pirate.
Yeah, with a silver tongue.
With a silver tongue. And he didn't tame the wild buffalo, he merely shot it. And at one point in time, he tried to assassinate President George Washington, who took out his wooden teeth and clamped Hans Sprungfeld in the nads and made him run away. There's that big thing. But Lisa had the conundrum of what do you do when you discover he wasn't a founding father, but it was like a founding member of the town of Springfield. We'll just say it for ease, it'll be a founding father. But what do you do when you discover a founding father was a piece of shit? No good, Nick. When everybody like reveres him and doesn't want you to speak ill of this huge mythological figure in the formation of the country.
Right, and I think that he's supposed to be in that episode, clearly, even though he wasn't a founding father. I'm pretty sure, obviously, it's supposed to be, the idea is that's who they're talking about.
He had a similar status, yeah.
Right, and that's who they're talking about. They're talking about the founding fathers. That's the idea that, because Simpsons, you know, as much as I remember being a kid and my dad be like, oh, it's just trash TV. Oh, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. But it's not stupid. Just like Futurama isn't stupid. The only reason the things going on are stupid is because they're more realistic than you would think. Sure, you know, people are getting their hands cut off and then having them back the next week, and, you know, and falling off a cliff isn't going to just be a roll down, oh, I'm hurt, you're going to die. But the themes in every episode are often like pointing out some silly thing about society or how people are or the government. And it's a lot smarter if you're able to see what they're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. And then in the end, Lisa decides that she doesn't want to ruin the whole mythological figure of Jebediah Springfield because of how important that is to the town. So she kind of discards the truth. And I feel like there's a big battle around that whole movement right now as to, okay, do we critically think about what the truth is, or do we let the people have their tall tale figure that built this country and not touch them as some sort of sacrosanct figure, I suppose.
I feel like their use has to change over time. Like, there was a time where it was really important that we saw the founding fathers as infallible people that created this awesome new thing, and they changed the game, and that drove people to be like, yeah, and really push through like frontier times and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and all those times, right? And I think that was really important to have that then. But we're at a time right now where I feel like it is important that we kind of cross that bridge and we see that, yeah, okay, there are a lot of things they did that were good, okay, but their reason for doing it is not something that is meant necessarily for the common man, right? And now we've come to a point where our rights and our freedoms are in question, and instead of people looking at those founding fathers and being like, yeah, well, we should change some of these ideas because freedoms and rights are disappearing. Instead, the people that are taking those freedoms and rights are using those same founding fathers to say, we're supposed to be like them. But their stories aren't entirely true, you know? Like George Washington chopping down the cherry tree and not being able to lie, never told a lie. That's, you know, that man lied to people, you know? It's documented.
I remember a big part of that episode also was that, didn't they dig him up to find out if his tongue was silver? They found out that, he didn't have a silver tongue, but then they found the silver tongue because the librarian, I believe it was, had already dug him up, found the curator. Tongue.
It was the curator of the Jebediah Springfield Museum.
Because the tongue was in the museum, dressed up as a figure.
As a cowboy.
Yeah.
That's right.
In a showdown. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Totally out in the open.
Yeah, when they exhumed the body, the tongue was there, and he quickly, while the dust was flying everywhere, pocketed it because that was his life's work. His life's work was built around the idea that Jebediah Springfield was this infallible, great man.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Speaking of Call of the Wild, too, though, we watched a movie for that one.
Speaking of Call of the Wild,
we got some movie reviews.
We talked about all the books, and we're, you know, because we watched another movie attached to a book here, and Call of the Wild, man. I did like the book. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Mostly because of that old, like, I don't know, the rustic nature of it. There was a reality to that time, a ruggedness, and yeah, it wasn't really great for social dynamics. And some of the ideas that they put forth, like, you know, because as we talked about with that, he kind of gave socialist ideas at the time, but later on it was pretty much like, maybe not, you know, so Jack London's a odd character, but
right. And it was like borderline Darwinism too. Like, it's whoever the strongest dog is who could sneak the most food or take the most food when it was given out, or whichever dogs were the strongest would survive and be like heads of the pack.
Right. So it kind of gave those rugged ideas and that rugged individualism almost. Like they were. That's funny because they had to be part of a team in order to pull the sled, but they were individually trying to do things to get themselves ahead.
The law of the land was more rugged individualism.
Yeah, for sure. But we watched the movie for that, and the recent movie with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I
was really amazed how well they trained those totally real dogs in the movie.
Totally real.
Super realistic.
It was uncanny how real they were.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was 2007 CGI or something in the movie made in 2020. One thing I wanted to mention was there's a scene where they pan out over the Alaskan town, the first town where they take Buck, and where he runs into Harrison Ford the first time. And they pan out at one point, and there's an American flag. And when I saw the American flag, I was like, oh, look at that. I'm like, fucking idiots. They put a flag in there with too many stars on it. And so I paused the movie and literally sat there and counted the stars. And no, man, 45 stars. They had 45 stars on it, which was right. It was right for the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
You would hope that if they would feature flags so prominently that they would have done their homework. I mean, this is Disney we're talking about. This was a Disney movie.
You don't know that they're going to do that, though. Like, I had to see, and it turned out they did. So from there, I was like, I can give this movie a chance. I mean, they, obviously cared enough to do that. But it was funny, the changes they made. First, they really I thought they did a good job of giving Buck a personality. I will say that, because the book was from Buck's perspective, so I guess it'd be kind of difficult to just watch the movie if you didn't give that dog personality. So I see why they made him CGI.
Okay, I kind of take it back. It's not a Disney movie. It's a 20th century movie, which I guess is owned by Disney, but still not like Disney.
It's very
Were they owned by
Disney-fied.
Disney at that time, though?
It is a Disney-fied version of the story, yes.
Right, yeah. Because they cut out from any of the points where there's any kind of where there was violence in the book. They kind of like tone it way down.
Oh,
like when the dogs fight, when Spitz and Buck fight, they end that fight with Buck winning and Spitz is giving up. But
it was an I Quit match.
Yeah.
It was an I Quit match.
It was a loser leaves town match.
The Buck ended with his choke slam.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what happened is the dog left. It didn't get killed. They just, where's Spitz at? Well, he's gone. He decided to leave. Yeah, and so
like Spitz had his back to him and he was like knocked down and worn out and everything. Like, okay, this is where the rest of the pack is supposed to converge on Buck and tear him apart, right? Nope. They kind of They wanted Buck to be their leader. They're recognizing his alphaness. They're all also like much smaller than I pictured when I read the book.
And they were all different breeds of dogs. Like there was a Cocker Spaniel, there was a Golden Retriever.
Yeah, I don't think Golden Retrievers are meant to pull things like that. I don't see it.
I assume they probably could, but not in the way that an actual sled dog could. But I will say, like, have you ever seen a Samoyed? A Samoyed is a pretty small dog, and that's like a really fast sled dog. You just add more dogs. when they're smaller like that. But Samoyeds, my dad owned a Samoyed at one time, and that fucking dog, I swear to God, it could run 50 miles an hour. It was the fastest dog I'd ever seen in my life. It would run back and forth across the highway. Like, it would get out of the yard, and it would literally just zip back and forth across the highway like it was a game. Never got hit by a car. It was crazy. But, yeah, I thought it was funny how when it gets to the point of the people that were going to get the gold, and John Thornton was telling them not to go because they were going to go through the ice. That was a whole thing where the people, they took off anyways because they wanted to. Mm-hmm. And they get up there, and he liked Buck so much already. He had like made this connection with Buck by meeting him a couple times already, that he ran after him with a backpack and a gun, and then held them all at gunpoint and was like, "Stop, you're gonna kill the dogs," or whatever. And Buck passed out. He cut Buck loose. The guy decides, "We're going anyways." So they went, and off screen, apparently, he lost his friends and the dogs.
Including Carrie and Jillian, which...
Yeah, and I was like, Carrie and Jillian's in here. Oh my God, I love her.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's great. She's funny,
underutilized,
and enjoyable.
Yes.
Underutilized,
way
underutilized
for sure
in the film. But yeah, that guy comes back to the town, and now John Thornton has Buck, and he's been taking care of him. And that guy comes back to the town and attacks John Thornton, right? And then it turns out that now he's got this grudge against John Thornton because he's the only one that survived, and they actually have a Native American save John Thornton in the bar.
Also, he thinks that he's trying to keep the information on where to find the gold, like
for some gold. Where the hidden treasure
that
is.
They talk about in the book, but in the book they like happen upon it and then they just move on. Whereas this is like the place where they find the gold is at this cabin. Yeah,
they actually do find the gold, or John Thornton finds the gold.
Yeah, because his friends are nowhere to be found. It's just John Thornton and Buck.
Right. And so a Native American saves John Thornton in the bar from this white guy that was going after him, right? And then the whole thing that ends up coming down, he doesn't get killed by Yehat, the Yehat tribe. He gets killed by this guy on a revenge trip. And this guy, what I thought was funny about it, and I'm fine with that change because I'm like, cool. They
for sure.
They were able to circumvent a whole problematic part of the book, right?
Yes.
So I was fine with that. What I wasn't fine with was the fact that the guy that tracked him down through the untamed wilderness of Alaska was clearly from the big city and did not have any knowledge of wilderness. So I couldn't understand.
He did have a map. He did have a map, and he was able to match it up to what John wrote.
Yeah, because John was just going out into nowhere. But when he matched up the map with it, it's like, oh, that's where the cabin is. So he was definitely trying to keep me from getting to the cabin.
So if I go out into the woods and hand you guys a map on how to get there, are you going to be able to find me? That's the problem I'm having here.
You've got enough time to commit to reading the map.
Reading a map and putting it to use in the woods are two different things.
True, yeah.
But that was the only problem I had with that. It had to happen. Don't get me wrong. It had to happen. It's part of the story.
Right.
But I was just like, this is, I mean, there are a lot of unbelievable things have happened in this movie so far.
It's an old trope in movies. If you have a map, you know the way.
Yep. And what I loved was he doesn't save John Thornton. John Thornton still dies, and Buck runs off and lives with the wolves.
Mm-hmm.
But when Buck stops the guy with the gun, he doesn't jump on him and tear his throat out or bite him at all. He football tackles the guy into a building that's on fire.
Burning cabin.
Yeah, into the burning cabin. And he just runs up, catches him on his shoulder, runs with him for 4 steps, and then tosses him inside the building. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, at the end. Well, again, Buck knows physics, because there's at one point where he has to, I believe, is he saving John Thornton? Or no, he's saving one of the pack. when he's with the wolves, and he uses physics that he knows apparently to save a one of the ones in the river by using a lever, because it's a simple machine.
Yeah, he like shoulders this big dead tree that's the wolf is caught on. Yeah.
So he understands physics and simple machines as well.
Clearly.
Also, we learn a lot more about John Thornton in this book, in the movie, and I was like, I don't care. Like, so John Thornton's a piece of shit because he left his family? Cool, I guess.
No, I don't think that's what happened. His son died.
His son died, and it was too much for him to take, so he ran off.
Yeah.
Yes.
He left his wife anyways, I guess.
Yeah.
It wasn't uncommon for children to die then, though. It was like a normal thing, so I don't know why.
But I don't hold any grudges against him for having that reaction, man. I don't know what I would do. You know what I mean? Like, God, I can't even think about it. But I just I could see wanting to disappear.
Mm-hmm. He also had some alcoholism, which may have manifested before he left for Alaska.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they gave him flaws all of a sudden. And it's like, no, John Thornton was supposed to be like the hero. But again, they had to change it for the movie. So
Buck was the hero. And he also didn't like the alcohol and was able to sober John Thornton up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Buck was aware of what the firewater does to the old man.
Yep.
The part that I did not like in particular was the part with the man with the red sweater. Not because he beat up a CGI dog. That was not upsetting to me. It was the fact
because
that
he only had hit him once.
Is the fact that the guy said, "This is the law of Fang and Club," and I'm like,
"Oh yeah,
no, that's not how it worked." He learned that over like 3 chapters.
Right. Well, and you would think that instead it would have been better because all through the movie, Harrison Ford is narrating Buck's perspective. And it would have been better to have him say, Buck understood now the law of Fang and Club. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But instead, they have the guy literally blurt it out at the dog.
Yeah, that was kind of lame.
Yeah. Just some strange choices. I saw why they made some of the choices. And like I say, I'm not upset with some of the changes they made necessarily. Just the execution was not exactly what I would have expected.
Yeah. It was very family friendlified.
Yeah, even how Buck is tricked into getting taken away from the judge, because at the judge's house he's kind of a nuisance. Actually, he's not the stoic dog that stands by and is able to do everything. No, he's kind of he runs that house. He wakes up. The one part is pretty good when he wakes up those girls jumping on the bed. That wasn't
him running the house. That was him ruining the house.
Yeah, ruining the house by running through the house. So
he demolished that whole big dinner. All that food on the table while the family was taking the portrait.
Well, and they gave him and the judge more of a relationship. Yeah, they actually had him and the judge, and you could tell the judge actually loved Buck, and you know, like he punishes him by making him stay outside, and that's how he gets stolen. Yeah,
it was also more of a kidnapping than a betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
By one of the hands.
Somebody in town heard his name and then was like calling him and trying to trick him into the cat or the whatever with a treat, the crate. Yeah. Overall, I mean, I actually might watch it again just because I think the boys would enjoy it, and they had already gone home when I chose to watch it because I figured it was going to be too boring for them. But then after seeing the moment I saw that the dog was, you know, it's meant to look real. It's not like it's Scooby-Doo CGI, but it's clearly a CGI dog. Mm-hmm. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, the boys probably would have liked this movie.
Yeah, it'd be a good one for the boys.
Yeah. Yep. I, on the other hand, will never watch it again. So
it definitely cleansed a lot of the brutality out of it.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
It was definitely familified. So.
And both of you described reading the book as fun, where I feel like the movie actually made the story fun, and the actual story was more of something I wouldn't call fun, but good. And
It's a
I guess
family
that's
interesting.
what I
fun.
meant.
It was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
What I meant more by fun was it was interesting and it kept me reading.
Mhm.
And I wanted to finish the book. Where, you know, when we got to other books, I didn't feel that way, you know, so.
Right. Surviving Alaska's no jolly romp.
But did you like the movie of the book that you hated? That
I did. I actually liked Lion Witch and the Wardrobe, the movie.
it was a lot better than I remember it being.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not a movie that I would pick up and just watch. I had never seen it because it never drew my interest, but I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the book. Yeah, I had my hang-ups on, for whatever reason, I can't explain it. I have my hang-ups on that over description of stuff, but
being in the wilderness in a fantasy setting.
yeah, I don't know what it is, but the movie was pretty good, and like they even have the battle in the movie. You're like, whoa, look at that, a whole battle.
Right.
I thought when it came to the point when they first encounter the wolves, Peter stabs into the fucking ice instead of fighting the wolf, and I immediately was like, great, this movie is gonna be a total fucking, they're not even gonna have what violence they had in the book, they're not even gonna have, you know. And no, it turns out he still does end up fighting the wolf and killing it, and they have a straight up crazy battle.
Mm-hmm. And they manage the more gory parts with like cutaways and editing and not showing like blood or whatever, but they're still fighting and violence. And
I mean, Edmund got straight up stabbed. I mean, he's a child and he got stabbed in the gut. They had that right on screen. Not that that's what I'm looking for necessarily. It's just it's a little bit more exciting to have that battle going on. And I don't know. When I was a kid, I always liked the idea of fighting adults. Like Three Ninjas was a great movie, you know. Completely unbelievable, but you know, I always felt like I could fight adults when I was a kid.
Can't see why. But yeah, all that battle stuff happened elsewhere in the book, and they, like the girls and Aslan, came in late to the aftermath of it.
They didn't shake hands very much in the movie, though. I did want to bring that up. In the book, they shake hands after they apologize, and I'm like, that's a very interesting thing for children to do.
Well, I mean, it was the time you taught kids to shake hands and be gentlemen.
I was taught to shake hands after I apologized.
The proper English gentleman.
Let's start it.
Yeah,
Let's start doing that, guys. After we apologize to people for whatever wrong, we shake their hand.
Dude, I literally, when I worked at Dunlop Pontiac, I got into an argument with one of the painters, okay, from the body shop. Him and I got into an argument, and I still felt like I was right, but I had basically, in my mind, I had lost because I just started saying mean things because he was annoying me, okay? And so later that day, I went back to him, and I said, hey, man, I said, I know we had a disagreement. It is what it is. And I'm like, I'm sorry for saying the stuff I said to you. And I put my hand out to shake his hand, and he looked right at me, and he had said some shit too. It wasn't like he was innocent, okay? It didn't happen in a vacuum. And he looks me right in the face and he goes, fuck you, and walks away. And I still, to this day, I feel like I won then. I won because I went in there.
You were the bigger man.
I was going to be a man and shake his hand and say sorry. And he said, fuck you back to me. So I won that interaction as far as I'm concerned. Like,
you were the bigger person.
I wouldn't think of it as a win had he not said fuck you to me. But when he did that, I'm like, I'm the better person, you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you were willing to recognize that it got heated and off topic.
Yep.
And hurtful things were said.
I always feel like, you know, you can't be perfect all the time. And it's really easy to remember the times that somebody gets upset or somebody says something they don't mean or whatever. But I feel like if a person can recognize they were wrong and can apologize, that if we aren't willing to allow people redemption or forgiveness, then what's the fucking point? You know, I mean, I'm not saying that people should get away with it all the fucking time. Like, you should just be able to be a dick, and as long as you say you're sorry, you just get away with it. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that, if people are being usually good and then go off the rails, that you gotta be, especially if they recognize what they did.
Yeah. Everybody has bad days.
Right.
And then
Well, first of all, did we ever acknowledge on the show that the whole kind of violence happening somewhere else and not giving much attention to the war part of it being part of the time when it was written, when Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe was written as kind of a post-World War II, like, war fatigue kind of thing, where you not only was people didn't want to hear about warfare or whatever, but also part of the reason why they were where they were was because they were escaping a war, and that this book was meant to be more of an escape from war, and it just so happens there's a war happening.
You had mentioned that outside of the episode, but I was thinking on that, and if you actually look back at that time, maybe one of the reasons there's a disconnect there for me, like, because I don't necessarily see that, because in the late 40s and the 50s, in the 60s, that was a very popular time for war movies here in America, right? So the difference is that we didn't get, other than Pearl Harbor, we didn't get attacked on our land. We didn't have bombs dropped on us. We didn't have ground fighting in our states at that time, right?
Right.
Whereas, so for us, all war was mythical. It usually is. For Americans, war is a mythical thing. Like, oh man, yeah, we're going to go in there, we're going to kick ass, we're going to do this, and then we
romanticize ideas of...
Yeah, it's romanticized. We never consider the result of that on, like, the veterans that come back, right? People say they want to support the troops, but then as soon as a troop or a veteran is saying, like, oh my God, I feel emotional from what happened, they're like, oh, you're a pussy, because in America, we have this idea that we're just unstoppable killing machines, and if you drop us in the desert with a machine gun, we'll take out the whole country by ourselves,
Right.
And so that might be where I was having a disconnect at that time when you had said that to me, because I'm like, what do you mean, dude? There was all kinds of war stuff being done at that time. Why wouldn't? But I wasn't considering that he's from, England, and for him, there was war fatigue because they literally had bombs dropped on them.
Yeah, these kids are refugees, and how many of these war movies and like glorification of our soldiers going over and being heroes, how many of them are written by war refugees and the people who bombs fell on?
Right. Yeah, none of them. I mean, that's not what it was about here. For us, it was this idea that we're fucking great because we're badass at doing war,
Going to Europe to save the motherfucking day, yeah.
Right. There's question as to, like, with World War II, here in America, we are, like, de facto, had we not entered the war, the Axis powers would have won, and that is questionable. I mean, definitely it sped up the process of winning. Definitely we helped. Definitely we were important in the war effort. But it's not necessarily true that had we not gotten involved, it was impossible for the Allies to win. So, but for us, that story is great. Even look at the joke that when you reach your mid-30s, you either start smoking meats or studying World War II history. That's a joke here in America, right?
Is that why I'm so obsessed with barbecue now?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Because I don't like war, but I do want to learn how to smoke meat.
I like
smoking some meat, man.
I like smoking meat while I'm watching documentaries about World War II. But for us, yeah, World War II is epic. It's not directly related to us because we're like, we went over and we saved the world. So it's an epic for us. It's not the same.
And we tried to keep that image up on our armed forces for years and years, but it never quite stuck for some reason. Like our engagements in Korea, Vietnam, and Middle East.
The purpose was always
much
different.
Messier. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in one of the things I had read about the difference between, like, World War II and Vietnam was in World War II, we were fighting for land. We were pushing the Germans back. We were, getting everything back for the countries that it had been taken from, okay? So we would take land, and then that land would immediately be occupied by Allied forces so that they couldn't just come right back in. But when we went to Vietnam, we were fighting for a body count. So, like, we would take Hill A, for instance. Like, okay, there's Hill A, Hill B, and Hill C. Well, we would take Hill A, we'd kill all the Viet Cong on Hill A, and then we'd leave. And the next day, more Viet Cong would come back and occupy Hill A. And then we'd have to take Hill A again. And then we'd leave. And that's why there are a lot of reasons that we didn't win, I guess. I don't know if that was ever a winnable war. But
police action.
One of those, or police action, whatever, yeah. One of the reasons that we didn't, quote unquote, win was because of that. We never occupied anything. We just fucking killed a bunch of people. I say we, I wasn't involved.
Right. Nor do I want to be involved.
There's one hazard on the Vietnam War wall. I took an etching of it. I don't know who it was, but I was like, oh, one hazard. Amazing.
Never heard that last name other than you and your brother.
Right. I wonder why my brother and I have the same last name.
But I'm just saying, like, you guys are the only hazards I know. I've never heard that name before. I'm sure there are plenty of Millers on the wall.
I've only met one other hazard, like, in the wild, and that was in Sacramento, and she was a customer that came into the record store when I was working there. I was like, hazard? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh, that's cool. I have the same last name as you. She's like, oh, that's cool. It's like not a big deal for her.
Just seems like a really rare occurrence,
Yeah.
You'd think that, yeah.
You don't meet many hazards.
And when I do see the name, it's usually with two Z's, and we only have one Z. So
right.
But anyways, that's the war piece.
Yep.
Except for one part of war that we didn't talk about yet, which is a brass cannon fired by Yeti.
Which is the canon ending of that book.
God, I love it. Just, I don't think about the anchovies. I'm just like, and then the Yetis hit me with a cannon. Best ending ever.
That was such a wacky book.
Yeah.
Really
I'm
was.
excited to read it more. I do. I want to go back and read more of that. It seems like a fun, crazy story.
Yeah, I haven't yet, but I want to.
You know what would be great is if they have a part in there about when the CIA was hunting Yeti in Nepal, which is a recently declassified document.
That is nuts.
Yeah. It turns out that the reason they were doing so, it was in 1959. The reason they were doing it was because they were trying to garner a relationship with the Nepalese government so that they could, it's CIA. So they were trying to get in there because it put them close to Russia and it put them on good terms with India. And it was just useful for America. But
only the tallest mountain in the world is good for the country, USA.
Right. But they did actually have to go out there and do it, because if they didn't, it would just look like they were just trying to garner a relationship. So they did, and there were rules to it. If they went out to search for Yeti to do an expedition, they had to pay 5,000, I'm guessing rupees. It's Indian currency, and they had to pay that to the government in Nepal to have a permit to go search for Yetis, which I don't know if that's still a thing. You might still have to get a permit if you want to go search for Yetis. If you found a Yeti, you could photograph it, you could capture it alive, but you could not shoot it unless you were defending yourself. Okay, so if you got it, if you did kill it or capture it, you had to surrender it to the Nepalese government. And there were a lot of people, reports of Yeti, like they were, people, I guess, in Nepal are very serious about their Yeti, or at least were in 1959. It's heavily believed. And there was a hand that is at a monastery. There is a hand at a monastery, a Buddhist monastery in Nepal. And somebody, not a CIA guy, but somebody actually stole one of the finger bones while a monk was sleeping and replaced it with a human finger bone, which there's a lot of questions I have about that, but he replaced it with a human finger bone, and they didn't notice, and they did get that finger bone tested, and it is not human, but it is hominid.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they don't know what it's from, but it's not a human. They do know it's hominid, though, so I don't know, maybe a trans-dimensional fur monster.
The evidence seems to point that way, yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing, I absolutely loved that Josh prefaced the episode by telling us about the expert on Coast to Coast AM talking about Yetis being from a different dimension, and then we get into the book and we fucking go into a different dimension to meet the Yetis. Like, that was wild. I never would have thought that was going to happen.
Right. I had no clue that Yetis had that kind of reputation as a multidimensional supernatural being. I just thought they were just... Is that like what a cryptid is, where it's multidimensional, or not necessarily?
No, cryptid is just an animal that's mythical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So griffins, Loch Ness Monster, Yeti, Bigfoot, all those.
Squatches.
Dog,
Yep,
the Michigan Dog Man.
Chupacabras,
yup. So apparently they did some DNA analyses on various samples that were purported to be from the Abominable Snowman, aka the Yeti.
Mm-hmm.
Came from various species of bears that were native to the area.
Okay.
So yeah, looks like they were, of the 9 Yeti samples, 8 turned out to be from bears native to the area. The other sample came from a dog. So, none of the samples... Are you
talking about hair samples?
These are just samples from different places, different monasteries that had them. So, yeah, they let them have pieces of them or whatever and let them do it looks like hair and bone samples.
Okay.
So monasteries in the area have like supposed body parts of Yeti.
Probably like the hand that Harold was talking about. And
I've seen that before on, because one of my guilty pleasures is watching nonsense supernatural stuff, and I saw one where it was talking about Yetis, and they were at a monastery and trying to get a piece of hair, and they didn't want to give up the hair. Like, it took a lot of doing for them to give up a piece of the hair.
Huh.
But I do remember that one being from a bear as well.
So yeah,
very interesting.
My thoughts on it are that most of these samples, are from bears.
Identifiable at any rate. All right. Well, does anybody have any lingering, burning questions related to any of these stories?
I wonder what really Lazy Stein was thinking with that Snowman book, man. We skipped right over it. We skipped right over it because, god damn it. Like,
we talked a little bit about it, but
we talked about the fact that we read it. We talked about the fact that we read it and it was bad.
And it wasn't so good.
No. I mean, it just... I don't know.
But yeah, what I would like to know is why the big bad snowman lied about being what's her name's father.
Yeah, that's weird.
Jacqueline, when it was created, it was essentially created. It was probably like a monster from wherever, but essentially created by her father, right? Because her mother, we established, is non-magical.
Yeah.
But it could have just told her that he's her brother.
Or anything, yeah.
Or we live in this took place in the 90s. We had telephones back then. You could call them. You could call each other. You could have a relationship with your daughter. Even though she lives in a different state, you could still call her. You could have visited, or maybe he'd come to
pretty remote.
He could come down to Chicago, get some Portillo's, then he might never leave. So
it don't work like that, man. He had to have absolutely no contact. It was the only way.
It was his burden, his purpose. He is the silent guardian. Well, not silent, but, the mysterious guardian at any rate.
Yeah, there were a lot of reasons that book was bad. But it just, man,
yeah,
it was a tough one.
Book. Yeah, it was not a good one.
I mean, I will say that that throughout the story, I really thought it was going to come to something at some point, because the snowman was describing all those different snowmen. It was creepy, but I expected those. I just feel like there's so many better stories. Like the snowmen could have like killed people or stolen something, or it's just no, it ends up being a giant snowman. It's the giant snowman. Ah! It was weird. And literally that's all I got to say about it though, because damn. It was bad.
It's so bad. We're not gonna let's not read Goosebumps for a couple rounds here. Do something
absolutely. Else. We are I mean, do we have I think that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing is Janelle and I played the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe game for PS2.
Oh yeah.
Well, it was somewhat highly rated. How was it?
It's not a bad game. 1 or 2 players. It's got like massive cutscenes like straight from the movie.
Oh Jesus.
But it still finds ways to put the kids in like situations where they have to like solve puzzles or fight off wolves or like light a stick on fire and burn some brambles here and there. It was developed by Traveler's Tales, which is also responsible for like the Lego games. And it really felt like one of those Lego games.
Okay.
Where you're running around, you're hitting stuff to make coins fall out, and you have to solve like simple puzzles here and there. So it feels like a Lego game before the Lego games were a thing. And we also had Turkish Delight while we did it.
Oh, very nice.
We actually streamed that live on Twitch. If anybody wants to take a look at the video and see some of the gameplay and see our reactions on Turkish Delight, but Turkish Delight is not bad.
Okay.
It's like a more solid Jell-O, like a pasty gel cut into squares, and absolutely just blasted with powdered sugar. Like we got powdered sugar everywhere. But yeah, not bad. The box that Janelle got had like 5 different flavors, and they were so coated in powdered sugar you couldn't tell what color they were underneath. So we had to guess what flavor they were going to be before we actually bit into them. So that was kind of fun. Not as gooey as the scene in the movie where Edmund ate his made it look, because that's just like a big old hunk of red covered with powdered sugar, and he like bit into that and it was just like gooey everywhere. It actually looked pretty tasty. But no, these are just like little sugar cube sized squares and pretty good. Turkish Delight.
Worth betraying your family over?
I wouldn't sell out my siblings for a piece, no.
Okay.
Especially since they come in peach flavored, and I don't really like peach flavor.
Yeah, well, let's remember though. Let's keep in mind that this was 1940s Britain, and it's not like they had all the different great candies that we have now. So
yeah, Wonka wasn't on the scene yet.
Yeah. No, his author was still getting a head injury from flying airplanes.
Yeah. He was still taking out Nazis, even though he was okay with them.
He just agreed with them about the Jews, okay?
Yeah.
He
not
agreed.
necessarily what they were doing.
Hitler kind of had a point about the Jews, is what he basically said.
Yep.
He's not about to take over Poland or move his armies or whatever, but he didn't like Jews.
Such a weird thing.
It is a weird thing. Like,
I mean, I don't know what it is. I guess I just can't understand the idea of not liking any group of people as a whole for any reason. Like, just to be like, they're all terrible.
Especially based on what other people have to say about them. I will judge people based on their actions, but
right.
To be told that they're just genetically they're just filth and they're stealing all their jobs and
yeah.
They're ruining our economy just by being here. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, us white people are the worst because we're the ones that started all.
Even that, the problem I have with that is that you're just throwing everybody in a box, and you can't just throw people in a box, man. I mean, what individuals are like matters. Okay, so I just don't agree with that idea. No, and it's not okay no matter what. You know what I'm saying? Like any group of people, you can't just throw them in a box like that.
The only people you can throw into a box are small plastic people, and sometimes that box will make them turn to life.
Yep, that is true.
So
That
there
is
we go.
Transport
fact.
their real life analog and replace the plastic husk, and they will come to life.
Yep, and
We
they
should
will
do that
be
book at some point.
they will be whatever the most stereotypical version of them is.
True, yeah, they will
Yep.
be the tropiest shit.
Bob's your uncle, Indian in the cupboard.
There you go.
Oh, did you have a Bob's your uncle summary for us today?
You know,
Yeah, you were
I
going
was-
to do a Bob's Your Uncle of the chapter.
I was going to, and then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, no, because I don't want to get lost in trying to talk about all the different books. I mean, realistically, what we're doing is a Bob's Your Uncle summary
Yeah.
of the chapter.
That literally is what we do.
Yeah, it kind of occurred to me that that's basically what the episode is a Bob's Your Uncle of the chapter, so...
It comes to mind that there were also two other books that we had in between the chapters. We had The Giving Tree, and we had the Star Wars Choose Your Own Adventure Special Edition
This
episode.
is true.
Ah, yeah.
Kind of honorary books in this chapter,
Yeah, technically,
technically.
for sure.
But yeah, they didn't fit the winter theme.
I mean, I got to do what I got to, go with the Empire and see what that was like. So that was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And The Giving Tree, that was a fun, just talking about it, because there's so many different ways to interpret it. And that's what I liked about that, was like, we could look at it from this way, we can look at it from this way, we can look at it from this point of view. And it was fun to analyze that for that reason. So
The more I think about that, though, and because I continued to think about it after we watched or read the book and everything, and I feel like because the writer never came out and gave anybody a complete idea of what it was that he was trying to say, I almost feel like he tried to write a simple story about a tree that cared, and maybe it had a minor lesson in it, but I feel like people put so much onto it that it ended up coming to a point where people were canceling half the book and making their own ending to it. I mean, I didn't understand that personally, because it's I'm not saying that you don't try and fix things, but that's the purpose of that book, is to see, or to me, if I read that book and was trying to get a purpose out of it, it would be like, see, this is why that's bad, and that was a lesson as to why that's bad,
But it could be read as, is that necessarily so bad?
It could be, but that's up to, again, an individual to decide that. It's like I say, man, you guys had brought up that there were people that actually had their own version that they wrote the end, where it got to a certain point and then the tree was like, listen here,
The tree set up boundaries.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it, but write your own book. You know what I mean? Just go write your own book.
At that point, it essentially was their own book.
Right. So, yeah.
It just kind of plagiarized the first half and
Right.
the art style of the latter half.
I think that it may not have been all of what everybody puts onto it, because that's what it really comes down to. It's that idea that art is subjective, so people all have their own concepts and ideas of what that book was supposed to mean, and it can be viewed from so many different places. I mean, even looking at it from any of our perspective, we all had minor differences in our perspective on the book. I guess to me, that's kind of the beautiful thing about it.
Mm-hmm. And it may not have even been done on purpose. Like you said,
Right.
He may have just been trying to write a story about a tree and a boy.
Yep.
And everybody projects what they get out of it.
Exactly. I almost feel like that's more likely what happened, and that's why he never gave an answer, because he was like, what the fuck have I done?
And it shows in his portrait.
Yeah.
That's on the back of that book.
Smile. Son of a bitch.
it's like, no, I gotta go hide out in the Playboy Mansion. I did learning more about it, because I was like, I know there was something up with him, and then I was like, oh, that's what he was doing. Okay. Very hedonistic. Nice.
Yeah, that was funny to learn about him.
Walking around with measuring tape. Ah, the 50s.
Yeah.
So, what do we got lined up coming up next chapter, y'all?
All right, we're bringing this episode to a close, and in doing so, we're bringing this chapter to a close. And in this being the third chapter, that's going to bring this book to a close. And we're going to take a break for about a month, handle the business, and when we come back for season 3 or book 3, as it were.
Book 3.
Yes, we're going to start a chapter on Tales of Survival.
Excellent.
Ooh.
I'm very excited for this because it has a book that I loved as a child. I don't know if it's still good, but that one is Hatchet. So
I didn't love it. I just read it for class.
yeah, and I just got into it. I liked it a lot. So
I've never read Hatchet. I have read one of the other books we're doing, Lord of the Flies.
Mm-hmm. Also for class.
Also for class, yep.
Yeah, that one I read for class. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember being, a chubby fat kid with glasses and a person in that story who gets picked on a little bit. I was like, I can identify with that. So yeah, we're doing Lord of the Flies. We're doing a listener suggestion. We're going to be covering Island of the Blue Dolphins. That was suggested earlier by Nyla.
Another one I read for class.
I've never read it, so I'm excited to see it.
I've read the majority of this chapter for class.
Oh, nice.
3 out of 5.
And then we're also going to be covering, instead of Goosebumps, we're going to cover the Boxcar Children. So we're going to start out with the very first Boxcar Children.
Mm-hmm. That is a long-running series that I believe is still being published to this day, and we'll be touching on the series as a whole, but we're going to dial into the very first one because it's kind of a survival tale.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure.
Enough of a survival tale that it makes the cut.
Orphan kids live in a boxcar on their own. Yeah, I would say it makes the cut, and it opens us up to have another series to pull from instead of just Goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have Babysitter's Club, but we've only done one of those.
We've only done one of Babysitter's Club. Wasn't there another one that we looked at, or did one of the series of? I mean, we did the Magic Tree House for this chapter as kind of another one, but
I think we were going to try to do the Michigan Chillers, but they're just so bad.
Oh yeah,
they
were so bad.
Yeah, yep. I think that's what I'm thinking about. Wanted to introduce another series to the repertoire, and we wound up bouncing off of Michigan Chillers.
No, thank you.
Again, I would read the first one, but that's it. These all look atrocious.
And then we're gonna wrap it up with the Choose Your Own Adventure, and Josh will be reading it this time. Mountain Survival.
Yes, Mountain Survival. It's an older looking one, but it looks pretty fun. So
sounds fun to me.
See what kind of surviving we need to do, or if we don't survive.
I don't know how we could possibly ever top the Yeti adventure. Now, I thought that the unicorn ones were going to have been such a great thing. Like, oh man, we'll never be able to top that. But after that Yeti one, man, woo!
I don't know if I'm going to be able to top the intro that I made for the Yeti one.
Oh no, that was beautiful
really
intro.
Good. Yeah.
A beautiful intro that no matter which way I try to put it on will not be allowed by TikTok. So I have to find a different spot on the fucking...
For a service that made its foundation on idiots lip syncing to music, it sure is a son of a bitch about allowing music in its clips.
Right. Well, it depends. Like, if the music is already on their app, that's why you hear so many of the same song from people.
Oh, it has to be on a whitelist of some stuff?
No, they have a predetermined, section of the song available for you to get that must already have gone through copyright release or something. But when you try to add your own music, it mutes it.
Weird. Just let us be creative in our own way.
Right. Which is bothersome because, as I understand it, the fact that it's parody makes it allowable, but...
Anyways.
It is what it is.
If you wonder what we're talking about, just go ahead and listen to Actually, the chapter or the episode before this one, episode 46.
Plus, it's super fun. We told you.
Yeah, it's a super fun
book
story.
Is super fun. Yeah.
Full of unforgettable twists and turns about yetis and multidimensional beings. It's great fun.
Possibly
but the
mushrooms.
intro is deserving of a Grammy.
Yes.
All right. I think that's going to do it for this chapter, boys.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm glad that I don't have to experience winter for a whole year.
Not until next winter.
Well, my winters here aren't so bad, but then...
Your winters aren't so bad.
I have one more good California winter, and then I'll probably have to come back to Michigan, unfortunately.
Hell yes.
It's going to be so terrible.
I have to hang out with my friends in real life.
Oh, we're going to have fun.
We might just do
fun.
Might just do in-person podcast episodes for a change.
Yeah,
I was going to say...
Speaking of new chapters, that is going to be a wonderful new chapter.
Yeah, get used to. You better be happy with not doing any winter work because you're gonna be stuck doing it.
Oh no, I know. That's all right. I've got a snowblower.
All right.
All right, and I hope you listeners come and join us when we come back next chapter. I hope you continue to support your local libraries and give a shit, read some lit.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
This has been Reliterated, a production of the Chocolate Milk Friends and part of the 989 Podcast Network. If you enjoy our show, please consider giving us support by subscribing, recommending us to your book reading, podcast listening, 90s nostalgic friends, and most importantly, rating and reviewing us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible Podcasts, and Spotify. Did I mention we really want some Spotify ratings right now? Your ratings and reviews go a long way towards getting us in the ears of new listeners. You're also invited to join the growing Reliterated community on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And if you really want to get nuts, we have a Discord too. So bing us and join us in this nonsense. If you have a book suggestion for a future episode or have questions for us, send us an email at reliterated@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.